we're going to build a massive application. When I say a massive application, a much larger application that I would typically recommend building within PowerApps. Typically, you want to keep a PowerApps application uh, between 1 and I don't know, maybe 20, 25 screens. That includes all your app admin stuff. Anything beyond that, I would actually recommend that you break down your application into smaller applications. And if you've got an application that where you've got 50 to 100 or even more than that, I probably wouldn't recommend Power Apps for that. However, I've got a special occasion here. I've got a huge application to build with many, many screens, and it's going to have at least 100 screens, maybe more. Okay. And I'm building this for someone or someone's who are very special, and that's you guys. I am building an application for you guys. So as I create new video ideas to share with you guys, new lessons to do within Power Apps, let's say I wanted to create a video about patching a data source. Well, what I would like to do is work from a single application and perhaps just 1 or 2 screens and show you examples of me using that function or a particular concept or a control within Power Apps. And I'd like to have a screen for each one, but I'd also like to, I'll keep it within one application so it's easy to share with you guys. So let's say, for example, I share one of these topics, and instead of having one little project file for that one little lesson, we're going to have a one application that's got all these different lessons in it. Okay. So, I was actually inspired by one of the, I'll call him one of the big Power Apps guys here on YouTube and on some of these other platforms like Twitter and LinkedIn, which is Daniel Christian. He's got this video that I watched here recently. If you go to his channel, he's got a video where he uses Microsoft Excel to generate and so I actually got this idea from him. I was like, why would I ever use something that's got 50 screens? But then I had this idea of working from one app to share these lessons with you guys. And I like that idea. I never had the thought of using Excel to automatically generate all these rows of code that we could have to use to construct a menu system on the side to navigate to all of those. I think in his video, he had 50 screens, but 50, 100, is virtually the same thing, the same exact procedure that you would go. So that's what I want to build with you guys. I was really excited to build. I thought it was a great idea. So let me show you an example. If you've watched a lot of my videos that I already have on YouTube, so here I am within Power Apps. If you go click on Home, there's a little thing over here called More Create Options. And if you click on that, you're taken to this screen, which looks very similar. And you've got all these application templates below. Okay, so one of those is the Power Apps training application templates. Okay, so Microsoft has released this, and they've got a good 22, 25 different lessons. And I've actually created an hour and a half or an hour, 20-minute video, sort of stepping through this whole template, going through all the basics. And I also provided, I cut all of them up because on a really long video like that, where I'm covering 20 different topics or more than 20 topics, there might've been like 22 or 25. A lot of times people are searching for maybe just one of those topics. So one of those topics was, how to work with galleries. Actually, there were probably 2 or 3 different lessons on just galleries alone. But if you wanted to do a search or a sort, or there's all kinds of things about variables, all that stuff is covered within that video that I created, and also in this template. And there's probably a good 25 different screens. So in a way, I'm sort of creating my own training template that will go step by step. And what I want to do, and something that I've always wanted to do in an application, which is to have screens be data driven. Now, the screens themselves won't be data driven. What we're going to do is when I click on the add, in fact, let's just go ahead and create a new blank app here. So I'm going to click on this screen here. You're given the choice between a Canvas app, one that's based on Dataverse and a blank website. So this is going to be a portal. This is a model driven. This is a canvas. So most all the videos I have on this channel, with the exception of perhaps future ones that I do, I might touch on model driven and portal, but pretty much I focus on canvas. Okay, so I'm going to create a new canvas app from blank here, and we'll call this Power. If I can type today, Power Apps. All right, I am getting an error with my live stream here. There's a issue with LinkedIn. So let me see if I can figure out that real quick. And if I can't, then I'll just have to ignore it. Okay. We're having trouble streaming on LinkedIn. This may be an issue with LinkedIn's end. Okay, I'm just going to click off of it. Hopefully it will resolve itself. All right, so this will be the PowerApps training app, I think is what I'll call that. All right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to click create. All right, so if you're creating a massive application, one of the things that that you'll really have to think about and plan for is, let's say you've got 100 different screens, and if you need to update one little element on all the screens in the application or most of the screens, in a traditional programming environment like C#, you could have classes that inherit from other classes. And what you could do, so that's a object-oriented feature called inheritance. And what you would do is you go to the base class and you would add the change there, and then all the other classes that inherit from that base class would have that new feature. Okay. However, here we don't have, this isn't a true object-oriented environment. You sort of benefit from some of the object-oriented concepts and features by using components, which is nice. However, there's a lot of things that are missing that you would get in a traditional real programming language, So what we're going to do as we build this out, we need to make sure, and with any app, you want to make sure you set things up as well as you can up front. So as you copy and paste things, it will have all the things that were on that original copy from. Okay, so let's say we have the very first screen. We want to make sure we have everything on there that we might possibly need in the future on all those other screens as we're duplicating that. Because if you could imagine, if you have 100 screens and you need to update things, that would be an absolute nightmare. Okay, and to be honest, that's a lot of times why I always go back to my application template that I've built. And I have a whole playlist here on my channel about how to build your application template. So check those out if you haven't already. But there is a lot of, in my template, setting things up precisely in a certain way, and then copying and pasting after you've set it up and configured it the way that you want it, okay, to sort of save you time. Now, this is taking quite a bit of time, so I may not wait for it. So I might just open up a new window here and say make.powerapps.com. And what environment are we in here? So it is the 3E. That is not the one that I want. So let me just take that off and sort of do a refresh there. Let me see if this is going to come up anytime soon. All right. So I want to go into this environment. Okay. And I want to click on create more, I'm sorry, from blank, create, and we'll say Power Apps Training Application. And I'm just going to exit out of that one. And I'm going to create this one. And hopefully it's a lot faster. Typically it doesn't take that long to create. The C just took, maybe 3 seconds there. All right, very good. Now, how we're going to do this is we're going to create a component. And it's just going to be mainly one component. And everything that we want across the whole application, if we want to add something to the application, we're just going to add it into that component. And then magically it's going to appear on all the screens or be changed on all the screens. Okay. All right. So let's do that. So we have a screen one here. I'm going to go over to components and I'm going to add a new component. Okay. And I want to adjust the width and the height of this component. Let's actually set that up right now to be the exact dimensions of our application. Okay. So we will go to settings and that would be under display, right? And, so it's just giving me the ratios, which I don't want. What I do want, and this might be a learning experience for us here, is we'll just drop a label down. And what we'll do here is we will say parent.width. Okay, so there's the width that we need. Okay, and then we'll do one for the height. Okay, so we'll go over here, 1366. Very good. And 768. Now, just a word about creating components is that you could go in here and instead of having a hard-coded number, you could say parent, and there I think there's like a design type of thing. Off the top of my head, I can't remember, but you could say parent dot width. But I actually wanted to work from what we had. So I'm just going to keep it as that. So we have that. Okay. Okay. So we've got the component over here. Let's just let's add something over here. A rectangle. It's got a little rectangle here for the top. And we will add another rectangle here. And let's maybe change the color. And let's add another rectangle here for the bottom. Okay. And then we're going to go over to the tree view control. Go over to the screens. And let's see here. I'm checking over here on my other screen just to make sure the live stream is going okay. All right, and while that is refreshing, all right, so what I want to do, yeah, it looks fine, is add the control over there. So I'm going to click on this plus. All right, looks like we've got a visitor here. I'm sorry, I would pronounce your name. I'm just afraid that I'll mispronounce it here. But from Nigeria, Lagos. Nice to be here. Well, it's nice to have you. Thanks for stopping by. I appreciate it. So yeah, so we're building a massive application, tons of screens, and so we have a component over here, and what we're going to do is we're going to add it in. And look at this, we have component one. Now, I really don't like that name component one. I always like to give my pretty much everything that I create, either a component or drop down any controls. You really should give it some meaningful names here. So let's do that. I'm going to use COMP, short for component, in here. Okay, so you can call me Toby. All right, well, nice to meet you, Toby. Very good. All right, so comp, and we'll call this main component. Okay, just as long as it's not component one, right? All right, so we're going to go over here, and we're going to click on plus, and we'll add this component over. Look at that. Very good. So we'll always have, so if we add 100 different screens here and we want to, change something in all the screens, we can just go over here to the components, modify it here, and all the screens are going to have it. Wouldn't that be great? All right. So something else that we can do from this component, This is the first time I've ever used this feature. This is a new feature that Microsoft put in a few months ago, which is there's a little toggle over here called Access App Scope. And what that is, typically when you're building components, you don't want it to have access to the variables from the application that's using it, because it could be all kinds of different applications that are hosting that component. So you don't want things to be tightly coupled. You want to provide property access so that application could use a component, instantiate it, and pass in the values. So for example, if you have a menu, you're using a menu component, and you might think, oh, well, I just want this new component to access my variable over here that's got all my menu items. Well, what if you need a main menu, and then you've got a different menu for your application administrators? For that type of case, for most cases, you don't want to use this feature, this access app scope, especially if you're wanting it to be reusable. Okay, so generally I would say that's a bad practice, but for this case I think it's a great idea, because I'm actually coupling this component to this large, massive application. And they're going to be tightly coupled there. And I'm completely okay with that. And it might become obvious here soon. So, all right. So, Elian, hopefully that I pronounced your name right. Hi, Elian from France. What type of app are you doing? We are doing a massive application. And by massive, I mean 100 screens or more. And this application is going to be a training app. So this isn't your typical app that you would build for a client. I'm actually building this application for you guys. So as I build out or as I develop new training videos for you guys, what I would do is I would just create a new screen or utilize a new unused screen that I've already created within this app. And then I would provide this massive application up there for you guys to be able to download and use. So that's the whole purpose of this. However, if you have some business need to have that many screens and have a huge application, we're probably going to uncover some of the issues that you might run up against. So this is a very different type of application. So this is an idea that I had to do, and I'm like, you know what? I think I'd like to actually build this with my viewers. It really sounds like a fun application to build, and sort of wanted to do it over live stream like this. So that's the type of app we're building. All right. So the first thing that I would want in any application, and this sort of goes back to if you check out my website, which is PowerAppsTutorial.com. I've got, let's see, yeah, this template here. And of course, I've got my video stuff there. But these are all the different things that I always like to put in almost any application. Okay. So the one here, we have an application header. So what I might want to have here, typically I like to have darker colors, but let's just go with perhaps a dark gray color for now. Okay, and I'm going to add in a label. And let's make this label to be white. And we will set up the font size to be quite large. Okay. And the width of the height of this bar, I would say should be more like 100. So I'm going to select the label, then select the rectangle. 100. Okay. Now, what we can do here is we could use this particular screen. Now, I'm going to hit Control left square bracket. And you notice what happened there? It's moving that control downward. Okay. So typically you would just click on this and say, bring forward. If you ever done that, have to move things around like that? Well, the shortcut is to hit Control square bracket, either right or left. Right will bring it up, left will move it down. Okay. So for right now, I just want to move it down because I actually want to interact with these controls here. And what I'm going to say, I'm just going to move these to the side. Okay. And what I want to do is I want to add a text box. And we could just change the whole name of this application with this text box. And let's just add a button here. that will change it for us. Okay, so we might actually call this txt app name. Okay, and then what we'll do under this button is we will create a variable that allows me to edit it. There we go. So we'll do a set, and we will use the recommended Microsoft practice for naming variables. For a global, it's GBL, global, and we will say app name, and we will use our text box, txt app name.text. Okay, so I'm going to hold down the Alt key on my keyboard. I'm going to click on that button, and it's going to set up that variable. Now, over the component, what we'll do for this text box, what's great about this is for this component, we need to turn this on because that is a feature we want to use. If we didn't use that, in order for this component to get at those values, we'd have to create a property. So over here on the right side, now I have videos that sort of show you how to create components properly in the more traditional way that you'd want to create them. However, so I go over this. I go over how to create these properties, how to set them up properly. But because we turn this option on, we don't have to do that. We don't have to do those extra steps. We could just reference that variable over here. So I got the label clicked. I'm going to click on text, and instead of the string literal, I'm going to say global. Look at that app name. Okay, so it's a text input. So I'm going to go back over to the screen, and I'm going to call this PowerApps training app. I'm going to click on the button, and there we go. We've updated it. Very good. So that's our header. Now, what are the types of things that you like to put in your application? So a lot of times people will put some stuff over here in the upper right corner. So somebody said hi here. Well, hello. I'll try to pronounce your name, Shalish. So hello, Shalish. Nice to have you. And so what we're going to do is we are in the component. A lot of times people will want an image over here. So we'll set up the image. And we could reference the users function dot photo. Something doesn't seem right here. There we go. User image. Okay, so that should pull that in. Very good. Now, a lot of times people like to have a circle for their profile photo. So what we can do is we can look at the border radius. And instead of just putting a number in here, what we could say is we could say self.width. Okay, and that didn't give me exactly what I was hoping for. Okay, so that was a little much. So let's say divided by 2. Okay, that looks right. Okay, radius top left. So I clicked on this border radius, and if you look over here, it says radius top left. So that's a little misleading. Okay, but we could use the exact same value for all 3 of these. So radius bottom left. Okay, there you go. Well, that sort of looks interesting just right there, huh? But yeah, but if you want a full circle, we'll go over here to radius bottom right. Very good. And then we'll go down here to radius top right and paste that there. Then we have a perfect circle. Now, a lot of times what I like to do is give the image a good border, and I like to give it a border of white. Okay, so there we go. So we got the image. Now we could drop labels on here that reference the person's name and their email address and everything. So you could do that. All right. So the next thing I would want to do is add in a menu system. Yeah, a menu system. So instead of having this little yellow orange type of thing, what we should have here is okay. So yeah, a menu. And I think what I might do, we definitely need a gallery for the menu. So we'll say blank vertical. So move that in here. And I think I might want it a little wider than usual. Typically for menus, I like to go about 80 pixels. So right now it's 292. Let's try to stick with maybe 200. That would probably look good. We'll add a little label in here. Very good. We'll put that up there and we can move this up or just click on the gallery itself. For now, I'll just give it a little temporary border so we know where it starts and ends. All right. So what we'll do a lot of times for something like this is I will set up this control, its height to actually look at the parent, which is the gallery. Parent dot template height. Very good. So we have that. And I might actually for now set up the width to be the same thing. I'll say parent dot template width. Very good. And you guys may know this, a gallery has always got a padding. I think I might go with a padding of 2. And then a lot of times what I like to do is give the background color. No, that's not what I wanted to do. Make that back to white because I don't think I had at the gallery. Set this up to be a light gray. Okay. And then what I do for a gallery when I'm setting a menu is I scroll all the way down for the gallery and I find the template fill, which is at the top once I scroll all the way down. And what I'll do is I'll use an if statement and I'll say this item dot is selected. Now this item is the current row in question is selected. If it is selected, I think what we'll want to do is say light yellow, otherwise white. Okay, so that will be our menu. So right now, what this thing uses as a data source is this custom gallery sample. And that's fine for now because we really haven't built all of our screens up. We haven't created a good, a table built for our navigation. So we'll just hold off on that for now. I don't know that we really need a footer for now. We can just take that out until we're ready to use that. Okay, so as you guys build your apps, I'm looking at the chat here. As you guys build your apps, what are the other things that you like to build? So as I'm waiting for somebody to put some things, so you guys, whatever you're going to suggest, you're sort of going to drive what I build into this app. So let me know what you think, or if there's anything that you find challenging that you always like to have in an app that you don't know how to do. Let me know. But so typically, I like to have in there dynamic theming. I like to have a weight spinner. A weight spinner is a great idea. And typically what I like to do is create like an animation that pops up whenever, let's say, a database operation is going on. I like to do that a lot of times. So we do have an application header. Something else that we should probably do over here in this component, we could probably move this down a little bit. And let's add in a little place to display the name of the current screen that the user is on. And let's make this something like 60 pixels. Let's make it a much lighter gray than what we have there. Maybe we'll use a color, maybe like a light blue. I think that would look okay. I wasn't planning on building a full-blown dynamic type of application right now. Of course, we could always add things to the component, but the full dynamic theming, because I've already sort of gone over that. So, Andy here says a location check in app for field staff is my next project. A location check. Okay. Oh, check location check in. Okay. All right. So, so I might have to think about that, how I would incorporate into that, but I'm going to keep that in mind. And if I sort of get the sense that it's outside the scope of this particular app, perhaps I will do, it could be an idea for a future video. Okay. But if you could tell me more about exactly what that is. Now, does that mean like with social media, how like you can go to a restaurant or some location or event and you can check in and all your friends and family can sort of see that you checked into a spot that perhaps you're proud of that you're going to or whatever. Is that what you're sort of thinking? So I'll wait for your response there. Okay, so what we have here, we have a little screen header here. And what I'd like to do is add in a label. Okay, and maybe have that the same height of this bar here. And this thing could maybe be moved over a little bit, and perhaps we might have a really long application name, so we'll make that a little bit longer. Okay. Now for this label, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say app dot active screen dot name. Okay. Now we don't see anything here just yet because we're actually inside the component. We're not actually on a screen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say if the length, or I could say is blank actually. Let's say is blank. Let's see if that works. If it is blank, just type something in there. Otherwise, we'll say app.activescreen.name. Okay, very good. Um, and we'll say screen name here. And perhaps we want this to be a little bigger, maybe 18 or 17. Be good. So that will be the screen name. Okay. Now I think I might want a little more contrast up here with the white. I might make that a little darker. Okay, that looks a little better. And maybe make this a black color. Okay, looks a little better. All right. Okay, very good. So now if we go back over to the tree view here, you'll see that we are on screen one, and it's displaying that there. Okay. Um, all right. Very good. All right. So what are the other things perhaps that we will need in here? Debug feature, app on start code. Okay. All right. So what's great about how we're designing this application is that if there's anything we want to add in later, we'll just go to the component and add it in there, and it'll just magically all be on all the screens that we add from there on out. Okay. So, all right. So I see another comment here. Maybe outside the scope of the session, but I have staff traveling to many sites in a bit of a dangerous area, and we want them to check in so we know that they made it. Ah, that's a very good idea. Okay. So you might want to have, I haven't built a lot of location apps, but I think I've seen this before where there's a location. Look at that location dot altitude, latitude, longitude. Okay. So you might be dealing with that, and I think there are a lot more other things. There's some map integration and that type of thing. So they don't have to type in that information. Perhaps you don't want them to have to type in addresses and that type of thing. They say, "Hey, check in. I'm here. I'm safe." That type of thing. So yeah, that might actually be eventually a screen within this application that I sort of built in. Make it a separate app, so we'll just spend a focused, concentrated time on just that particular topic. But I definitely appreciate you bringing up that idea. Very good. So thought I'd share that with you. All right. So what I want to do is I want to show you guys and give credit to another YouTuber here. So I'm going to type in. Um, let's see here. What's the best way of doing this? It might be just to. I'm going to bring up YouTube in a separate. And I'm going to get the link to it. And it's from Daniel Christian. If you're not familiar with Daniel Christian, I think you guys should check his channel out. So let me just copy this link over here. Easiest. Very good. So we have his channel here. Definitely recommend checking him out if you haven't already. By the way, I think he's got like over 300 videos. So he's got some good stuff here. It has to do with Excel. I know that because he used Excel to actually generate um, some code for a menu. It was genius. So if I type in Excel here, of course, it would help if I typed it right, right? Okay. Now I don't immediately see here. Yeah, I don't see that. But it was a recent one, so it shouldn't be that hard to find here. So we have a scrolling gallery. We have all kinds of good stuff. Yeah. I think this is it. Add Power Apps formulas using Excel. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, yeah. So what he did, I'm going to fast forward to sort of show you. So this video is actually inspired by this video that he did. Okay, so look at this. He's got 50 different screens. And he didn't change the name of it. I mean, I guess you could, but I don't plan on changing the name of the screens. I'm going to make the names of those screens within the gallery to be dynamic. Okay. So, all right. So what we'll do here is we will. I sort of wanted to show you what the idea was and what it's going to look like later on. But if I go back here, I sort of wanted to see an example of what he did over here in Excel. Yeah. Okay. So it's sitting here paused. So he's got Excel up, and what he did, he's got a column of static information, and then he's got this dynamic information. So as you know, like with an Excel, if you ever used Excel, you can have like a sequence of numbers, and you can drag down on that particular column, and it will actually fill in the numbers sequentially for you. Okay, so we're going to have screen one, screen two, screen three, all the way down to screen 100. So whenever, instead of typing or copying and pasting, you could use Excel to do this. And something I told him down in the comments, like, dude, that is genius. Love that. And this is the type. So you guys realize that whenever you have curly braces within Power Apps, that's actually like a record value for a table. If you're going to construct a table value, wherever you have those curly braces, you're actually constructing a record. So, so here we've got an ID. So he's got an ID for each one. That's cool. And then we've got the name, which he's making it screen, so on and so forth. Okay, so I just sort of wanted to show you that, give him credit for the idea, and that's sort of what I want to do here. So let's bring this open this up, and let me make sure I open up a blank new Excel document for us to do this. Okay, very good. And I'm going to take his video up there, and so I can sort of look at as I'm doing this. So what is recommended that you do is you've got the static information here in one column. So curly brace, ID, and then you'd have the dynamic information there. Have a comma. And what we will say here is actually say screen reference. That's how I want to do it in this app. Okay, so we have screen reference. And we're going to have a colon. Let's say screen one, double quote, curly brace, and then we'll have a comma there. Okay. All right. So something else I want to do is I want to have corresponding. I'd like to have a SharePoint list out there, a database table in SharePoint that's going to have all these values. Now, what I can't do is have a dynamic reference to those screens. So that's why it's important that we have these screens named off of screen 1, 2, 3, so on and so forth, that we don't change that. And then what we can do is have some dynamic information over in the SharePoint site. Okay, so here I've got a fresh new SharePoint site. So what I'm going to do here, actually, that's not the right one. Let's open up this one here. This is what I was looking for. So I created a new SharePoint site called PowerApps Training. And what I'm going to say is I'm going to create a new list. I'm going to create a new list here. And I'm going to call this, I don't like to put spaces in my list names within SharePoint. So, and in some cases, I actually like to use the prefix TBL. So if you have a bunch of SharePoint lists that are used within your Power Apps as data sources, in order to get the IntelliSense dropdown, all you have to do is type TBL and you're going to get all your table names there. Now, not every application that you build, you have the freedom to do that. Perhaps you're being asked to connect to SharePoint lists that have already been created. So you don't really have that luxury. But if you're creating them fresh new and it's only going to be used within your Power Apps application, I think it's a good move to have that. So I'm going to call this table screens. All right. So here we go. And what I like to do whenever I create a new SharePoint list, I like to go down here, show hide columns, and put the ID up here in front of title. So we have that. I'm going to click apply. And so what I'd like to do here within the SharePoint list is have any additional information that you would want to use within a menu. Okay, so you might have. So we go back over to Power Apps. We are going to have all of our screens, screen 1, screen 2, screen 3, and so on and so forth. So we need a good friendly name for each of these screens. We also might want to display an icon for each of these screens as well. So perhaps we might do that as well. That might be a feature we add later on. But I know that we need a good friendly name. We need the actual name, like the screen 1. We'll have an ID. So the ID will correspond to the ID within the SharePoint list. So if you're not familiar, a SharePoint list will always have this ID. So like an auto number, or in SQL Server, it's called an identity field. So let's say if we create a new field and type in a value, it's going to assign it a value of 1. Okay. And then right now the title is going to be required because we haven't changed that at all. But what types of other information would we want here for the menu? So we could say, what are we calling it over here? We are calling it, so you got screen reference, okay. We have the ID. And then we also might want to have, let's call it menu text. Okay, so we'll have menu text for a screen. Okay, we also might want to have screen heading text. Okay, so let me sort of explain that. So for the screen 1, this first item, it would be screen 1, but perhaps we don't want the screen. I don't really want the users to see screen 1. I might want them to see, oh, well, I'm doing a lesson about variables. So I might want to have the word variables here. And then for the screen heading, I might like how to use variables, how to use global variables, something along those lines. So they all sort of correspond to each other. So we've got different pieces of information. But we could go sort of wild with creating all kinds of columns, different pieces of information. So we could say, screen use. And we could set this up to be multiple lines of text. Okay, so we could actually set this up to have like another text area, a larger text box. So we could actually type in what we intend to use that screen for. So this is all going to be sort of dynamic and use that SharePoint list for all the data. What other types of information? And we can just sort of build onto it as we go. But for now, what I want to do is we're going to have the ID. Let's add in, I think I might use the title for the actual PowerApps screen name, such as screen one. That would be good. And I think this would be good, just how we have it right here. All right. All right. So let's go back over here. So we have an ID, we have the screen reference. Okay. Put that over here. And that one we'll do another comma. And then we'll say screen name. Okay. Colon. Now I think for this, let's see here. I don't even think we need these quotes here because it's going to be, there's not going to be any spaces. But over here, we actually would want that. So screen name, screen, add a new column. And then we will say one there. Okay. Very good. All right, so let's select all of these and pull this down. And we're going for 100. I don't know, 100 seemed like a lot, but I could see myself perhaps over a long period of time creating 100 different training videos on small topics related to PowerApps. So that's what I was thinking. All right, so we have all this. And what I want to do is I want to copy that. And a lot of times what I do is I open up Notepad++ and I'll paste it there and sort of look things over. So for example, let's add over a button here on select, and let's do, I'll paste that. So you see that here. Okay. So you can create a table by using the table function. Okay, we don't need that last comma, but we'll put in the parenthesis there. So if I was referencing that screen one, should be like that. Okay. So I might need to do a little bit things a little differently here in my Excel spreadsheet. And let me just try to put the one there. I'm going to take out that, delete that column. Delete. All right, very good. Okay. Yeah, this might work here. Okay. The only problem is it's going to have some extra spaces after the name, which I don't know that I want. So let me do a Control Z, and let's put in here a quote there, and let's see if it does something. No, it won't. It's not going to allow that. Okay, so we're just going to roll with that and just deal with what we have there. We'll scroll all the way down till we get to 100. All right, there, and we'll go back here. So we've got the table function. All right, so I'm going to select all of this minus the first line. I'm going to paste, make sure that last comma is out of there. Very good. Now it's going to complain a lot because we only have one of these screens actually created, right? So screen reference, screen one, and then okay. I think this is fine. We can deal with the extra spaces in code. Maybe actually do a mass import into the SharePoint list and then strip out those spaces with trim and then read them back in. And then that wouldn't be there. Or we could just do a, you know what, what's great, Microsoft did give us a little find and replace thing here. What we could do is we count this one, two, whoops. Okay, that looks like maybe it's a tab. So I'm going to hit a find and replace and replace that tab and replace it with nothing. Hey, doesn't look better? All right. So after we actually create this table, we should probably put that into a variable. So I'm going to use set and prefix GBL for global. I'm going to say menu items. Okay. And the comma, whatever I put after the comma, is going to actually be the value that's thrown into that global variable. So I'll put an ending parenthesis there. And I believe the only errors that we're dealing with is that these screens just don't exist yet. Okay. So if I were to go in here and do a /*, go down to the very bottom and do a */, I'm expecting this not to have any problems at all. So that is the case. Okay. I think I'm just going to click on this button for now. Okay. So I am going to duplicate this screen. Okay. So duplicate. And I don't want all of this other stuff in here. So I'm trying to think which is the best way to do it. Should I just duplicate the screens because it already has the control from the of the components over there? This component here, it already has it. Or should I just click on create screen, create screen, create screen, and then copy and paste them over there? I think I might do the former instead of the latter. So I'm going to click on blank screen. Let's see which takes the least amount of time. So let's just do 10 real quick. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All right, that's pretty quick, right? So I'm going to delete this one. Now, again, what we're looking for is to have this component. How easy is that to paste over? It's pretty easy. So I might end up doing that. Okay. All right. So we've done 10 at this point, and we've got this button here that will actually create the menu item. So let me take this /* out, and I'm going to go in here and do the /*. Okay, I'm going to rerun that button there. Okay, and then over here in components, we can actually use that value. Okay, so we've got this selected for the data source. We actually do have a data source. I don't know why it's blank up here. Let me get rid of that find and replace. There we go. So it is a global GBL menu items. Look at that. So there's our menu items. Now, what we might end up doing, because we might actually want to have some better menu text in here, we can make our font a little smaller if we want, and maybe put in a little bit more padding, like 10 pixels. So that looks a little better. So if we go back over to the screen, so each of these screens here, you see, we can get to those. And then over here for this component, in order to get this menu to work, what we'd want to do is we would reference this on select and we would say navigate this item dot screen reference. So that's the screen that we're going to go to. And then the second parameter is the transition. I personally like the fade, but we don't have to use that. We could use screen transition and look at all the different screen transitions that we have accessible to us. So perhaps cover right. Let's just use that for now. We use the cover right, and then we don't need to pass any local variables over there. So we'll just end that there. Okay. So let's try that out. So we're on screen one, obviously. It says screen one here. Click on screen two. There we go. Oh yeah. So it does cover to the right. Um, I I really like fade a lot better. I think I'm gonna change that. I think it's gonna bother me. Yeah. So we'll put fade in there. So I'm gonna go back over to screens and we'll make sure that works okay. It's really subtle with the fade. It just sort of it almost seems like it's the same screen because you don't really notice hardly anything. But you see that we're on a different screen because it says screen four. Okay. And screen one we know has a few more things that the other ones don't. Okay. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to proceed this way and I'm going to I think I have a good idea of what I want to do here. So there's component 9, component 10, and it's using an underscore. Okay, so I'm gonna copy that, and this is how we'll proceed. I think this will be most efficient. New screen, blank. Very good. I'm gonna paste. And what I like about this is that the component, this comp main component's got an underscore. The number 11 corresponds to the screen name nicely. So I do like that. So I'm going to continue to do this until I get to 100. 13. If you're watching this on replay, you might want to fast forward. If you're watching this live replay of the live, this is just going to take us a few minutes. So I'm looking over here at the chat. I don't see any new comments, but you know what, guys? Let's use this time to, if you have any questions about Power Apps, we could use this as a little, as I'm doing this monotonously here. We could use this time just to talk about Power Apps in general. If you have any, we could turn this into a question and answer session until I get all of these put in here. But right now we're the 20% done. I would imagine a Saturday afternoon probably isn't the best time for people to view webcasts. So um, I'm not surprised that I don't have a terrible amount of people here. But I think a lot of people like to see the replays as well. But sort of curious, you guys are all kinds of different parts of the world. Like to hear what's going on in your world, in your country, in your location. If you feel like sharing. 6, 27, 9, 30. Ever noticed something really odd in Power Apps? Perhaps it's just not behaving the way that you would expect it to. Um, There are a lot of reasons why you might actually want to, in that case, if it's doing something weird, what I like to do is just completely close down Power Apps, close down the project, and reopen it. Sort of like whenever you're experiencing some weird issues with your computer, you reboot your computer, and most of the time it sort of fixes the problem. So I see as I'm adding all these things, I could be going into individual ones and collapsing each of these if I want to, or I could just quickly close down the project and reopen it. Um, 39, 40, 2, 43. Five. Yeah. Oh my goodness. So yeah, so Toby said here, sometimes the undo button doesn't work. Absolutely. And you know what I do to combat that is I use Control S. In fact, a little saying I have, which is save early and save often. I'm so glad you mentioned that, Toby, because I haven't saved this app once. Um, Now, if you guys are familiar with Power Apps, you might know that Power Apps is supposed to be saving every 2 minutes. So if you go over here to settings and you scroll down, look at this, save changes every 2 minutes. So that's enabled. But if you don't save that first time, it's not doing that. So what I found is save early, save often. And so it does save every 2 minutes. However, it doesn't create those restore points. So if you save, what you're going to find out after you do a save, like going up here, you say see all versions. Look at this. It's going to bring up a new window and it's going to show all the different versions. Okay. So I saved it and then I saved it again. And what you can do, what I have found is great about dealing with this undo thing where it doesn't quite work, is you click on this and you can restore a certain version. So you sort of have a built-in undo, but if you're not regularly hitting Control S and doing a manual save, not the automatic save, doesn't create these restore points. If you do something, if you get a control fit just in the way that you want it, and you write some code or whatever, just hit Control S, Control S. So within a given workday, hopefully you've got a good 100 different restore points that you can roll back to. So if you mess something up really bad, you can always do that. So that's my little tip and trick for dealing with that do not working. So, and look at this. Hasn't been that much time. We're already at 50. We're uh, halfway done already. Do Yeah, it's Andy. Yeah, good tip. Yeah, absolutely. I've learned that through a lot of pain. So what are little tips and tricks that you guys know about that perhaps the rest of us don't know about? Maybe you've sort of dealt with some crazy thing within Power Apps. How do you deal with something that is really annoying within Power Apps? I would love to hear. Um, I'm sure if you guys have worked with Power Apps for a while, I would imagine that you guys have maybe perhaps your most favorite tips or tricks. If I was creating this as a video recording, it typically takes me. I don't know if I create an hour-long video. Typically, I record for a good 2 or 3 hours, and I cut out a lot of the boring parts. This would be a part that I would be cutting out for you guys, so you wouldn't have to put up with seeing all this stuff. But since this is a live, um, I could go back and cut this boring part out. But 5, 6. I'm curious for you guys that are on here, how long have you guys been working in Power Apps? I've been working in Power Apps, I'd say about 2 years. Um, and then I have over 20 years experience as a software developer that sort of helps me with that, with the development and the designs and stuff that I use in Power Apps. I sort of draw from that experience. But in the grand scheme of things, Power Apps really hasn't been out that long. Maybe 1 week. All right. Andy says he's been working with Power Apps for 1 week. Okay. Well, I don't know how you feel about Power Apps. Do you feel like you're a beginner? Some people pick it up really quick. It actually took me a while to learn Power Apps. If you feel like you are a beginner, and you need to know the basics, I have a whole. If you go to my channel and click on basics, I have a whole playlist for basics. I would encourage you, and you can learn the basics of Power Apps in about an hour or two, or at least just an afternoon. Um, what about you, Toby? I know that you're quite active in the Power Apps community. I've seen you be quite active over there on Twitter, so I imagine that you've got a good deal of experience or been working with Power Apps for quite a while. I would imagine. All right. So Toby says, a tip I use for a people picker is to use a display form, then copy the people picker. Ah, okay. So in the case like you weren't intending on using a form and you perhaps just wanted to use the patch. Yeah, very good. I've actually seen a lot of people, and I use it if I need to use the attachment control. Um, and I don't want to use a form, I'll bring over a SharePoint list. I collect 1 year late last month. Okay, cool. So I would imagine you are either an intermediate or an advanced user yourself. I would presume, but yeah. All right, guys, we're almost there. So I apologize. I wanted this to be really big 100 screen application. And this is going to be something that we'll build onto over time. So what's funny is, I mean, I could be building on this application for a year or two, and we'll have this live stream sitting out there. Oh, if you ever guys want to see, it was, me and four or five other people sitting out there, sort of building, actually creating this. If you ever want to see how it was created, go back there and watch some of the footage of how we created that. So there might be some people that are actually interested in it. So we're getting pretty close. We're up almost to 90. There's 90 right there. So for those of you who are joining a little bit later that didn't get the very first few minutes, Toby said, I still call myself a good learner. Absolutely. And what I've learned in the software development or the IT world is that you're constantly learning, you know. And that's what you have to be good at. You got to be good at learning, and also you will encounter problems. You'll encounter snags or something that would be, let's say, a blocker or something like, you got to have you got to be resourceful and have the wherewithal to, I don't know, do some web searches and figure out perhaps what's going on and move past that problem. That's what a good indication of a successful person building applications would have, is being a good learner and being able to sort of figure it out. Maybe not sitting there trying to bang your head up against the wall, but doing all the web searches and sort of digging around. And we are at 100 screens now, guys. Okay, so this is where sometimes I get a little, maybe you'd call it anal, about having things collapsed. I think what the best thing to do, I'm going to do a Control S, so I don't I don't mess that up. Okay, do I want to publish the version? No, I don't want to do any publishing right now, but I do want to close this down. I'll reopen it, and then everything will be collapsed. All right, so I'm gonna go back to apps, and we have Power Apps training application. All right, so I'm gonna go in here and I'm gonna edit, and I can close down this one. I always like to close down windows I'm not necessarily using. So we're definitely gonna be using this one here. I'm gonna open this up on my other screen so I can sort of see that. I don't know that we need Excel anymore, so I might close that in a moment. So how long does it take to open an app that's got 100 screens? Well, just a few moments. All right, there we go. Now, I will tell you about naming your screens. Microsoft has a document out there that outlines all the best practices, recommended practices for building applications, and the best practice for naming your screens. See, we have these things, screen one, screen two, whatever. They recommend actually naming screens, actually giving it a good name with spaces, and actually having a screen, the word screen at the very end. So for example, edit user screen or edit customer screen, actually sort of spell that out. And the reason for that is that people who have accessibility needs, um, perhaps somebody is visually impaired and they're using a screen reader to sort of name off the screen that you're on, you would actually be doing them a service by spelling out the screen name and sort of describing what it is inside the screen name. Okay, so we're going to do that in a way later on with that SharePoint list and having good names in there. Um, so I just thought I'd mention that as you're naming screens. And any other application, I would not be leaving these default names. But for this case, we're going to leave them because if we go over to this button that we created, you'll see I don't want to have to update this big long list. So anyway, there you go. So this is the code that's going to create our menu variable. Okay, and I hit format text. Now, what's great about the format text here is you got code and you modify the code or add something here. I generally like to use this format text because it makes the text more readable and more friendly to look at. It sort of breaks things up a little bit. Um, and also I know is if this thing is enabled and I click on it and it formats the text, I know that there are no errors in that code. Now, there might be bugs, but there shouldn't be any type of syntax errors in your code. And sometimes that's sort of nice to know. And after I do that, I hit a Control S. Get a good restore point there. All right. So we have an item. Very good. All right. So let's hold down the Alt key and we're going to click on that button. It's going to create all those screens here. All right. So we have a menu system. We got 100 screens and we can navigate between them. Now, there is something that's going on here. And so you can see here at the top, we've got screen 100. But the first screen is actually enabled, so or selected for this gallery. So that's a problem, right? So let's sort of overcome that issue while we're here going through this together. So what I want to do is for a gallery, if you go over to advanced, there is a property called default. Okay. And what I want to do is I want to do a lookup that's going to give me a single record within that table value. So let's do a lookup. All right. And we're going to be looking in global menu items. And we're going to be looking for the screen. Let's look at the screen reference dot name. And we will check that against app.activescreen.name. Okay, and so what that should do, that should automatically select the screen that we're on inside the app. Now, right now we're in the component. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to go back over the screen here, and look at that. Now that is also something that now I knew that about galleries in general. If you want one to be selected, if you want the selected one to change dynamically, you would use that property. But that is something that Daniel Christian mentions in his video that I brought up earlier in this live stream. Okay, so if you want to know more about that, he talks about that. Okay, so now that we have that solved, you'll notice here that we have. Let's click on screen 2. We've got screen 2 there. Now I noticed that we sort of lost our application header. And so we'll click on this button and it will do that. Okay. So let's make things a little more dynamic. Okay. So for example, we could, instead of changing the name here with a text box and a button, okay, let's go over here to the app on start, and we'll just set this app name to be over here. We need to make sure it's not start screen. We need to go to on start, put the code here, and we're just going to call this PowerApps training application. Very good. So we've got that. And of course, we need to run it. Okay, there it is. So I don't know that we need those two controls anymore. Okay. And Okay, so what we have here, we have all of this. All right. And instead of that being in that button as well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Control A, Control C, and I'm going to put that into the app on start as well. Okay. Very good. So paste that there, rerun it. And so that's all set up. Okay. So as it sits right now, so we've been streaming for how long now? It's been an hour and 15 minutes. So we have an application. It's got a single component. And that component, if we ever want to add anything on any of the 100 screens, all we got to do is go into the component, add it there, and it's going to be added on all the 100 screens. Isn't that great? We have an active working menu that pulls from dynamic information. I think we're doing well so far. What do you guys think? All right. So I don't think we need that button anymore. I don't think we need these labels anymore. Okay. Now, something I do want to do. Let's add our we've got this SharePoint list, and I want to add a reference to the SharePoint list. Add data. And we'll go down to the SharePoint connector here. Very good. And I'm going to paste the root of that. Very good. And we got TBL screen. So I'm going to add it. Okay. Let's go get ourselves a spinner animation. So what I like to use loading.io. And let's go look for yeah, go in the spinner gallery. And I think for now, I'm just going to stick with a free one. I do have a paid version. I'm just not logged in now. But let's just grab something that's free. I wish there was a way to filter it, but this isn't bad right here. I sort of like that. Let's go in there. And if you're going to use an animation here for a spinner control, what I recommend, turn that transparency on. And what we want to do is, I like these colors to be a little more neutral. So I might do something, if you make the values the same all the way across, like I just did, it's going to be black, white, or grayscale. Okay. And then for here, I might do something like DD, DD, DD. I don't know. I feel like it's too close to a white color. So maybe A. I sort of like that. Okay. So we've got those two colors going on. Now we could actually slow down the speed a little bit if we want. Okay. I sort of like that. So instead of 67, maybe speed it up a little bit there. Okay. So we have that. I am satisfied. I'm going to use it. I am going to export the animated SVG. And it's going to make me log in. Okay. I really didn't want to have to log in here, but I will do this real quick here. Okay. Oh. Here my other window, the other browser I am logged in. So let's go do that real quick. And we'll copy the numbers. So it's 4s and then A's. All right. So we'll go here. We'll do all that stuff real quick. Transparent. And 4. A. And the speed I think that we liked was the 0.75. Very good. And so Toby, you said, can we download an SVG for free from here? Yes, you can. You just need to create an account. And because I didn't want to create a new account, I already had an account. And this is, I have the paid version, so I could get one of the ones that are paid, but it's really cheap. It's like $2 a year, $2 a month. I don't remember what it was, but absolutely. So you do SVG animated, and it's going to give you this. And you say download. Yeah, absolutely. And what I'm going to do is move this window up, and I'm going to save. Excuse me. Save this on my hard drive. So I'm going to save this. I always like to name my graphics that I use inside my application with a prefix of GRA, short for graphic. So if I ever want to reference one of my graphics, I just say GRA, and then all my graphics are right there. So GRA, and I'll call it spinner. Okay, so we'll do that, and I'll move this away. Don't need that anymore. Go back, and we'll go to the multimedia tab here. I'll say upload, and we'll go find that file. All right, here we go. So click on that guy. Very good. Here it is. Maybe make it a little bigger. Yeah. Okay. Now the place that we want to deal with this is going to be over in our component. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to Control X. I'm on a Windows computer, so if you're in a Mac, I think it might be Command X. All right, so here we go. We've got this going on, and I'm gonna actually name this image of image. And you notice I was talking about prefixing your names of your multimedia. So GRA spinner. So if I was over here and I type GRA, I'm going to have a list there. So that's sort of helpful sometimes. So in order to do spinners are weight. What do you call them? Weight spinners. Weight. Help me out here, guys. I guess weight spinners is what they're called. Sometimes people call them different things, though. How I do this myself is I add over a rectangle, and I make it white. And I'm going to hit Control right square bracket a few times. Maybe it's left. It's left that moves it down. Okay, so there we go. And then what I like to have happen is I like it to be in the middle of the screen. And you see I've got those little guidance things there. So these two things here. But for this rectangle, I like to go in here and set this up to be something more like 80. So you can still see that we're on the screen here, but you indicate to the user that, the application is working. It's not frozen, that type of thing. Okay, so I'm going to do, I'm going to name this rectangle. I'm not going to name it REC, which could be confused with record. I'm going to say RET for rectangle, since the rectangle does have a T in there. Rectangle, I'm going to say spinner BG, BG, short for background. Okay, so I've got these two things, and I'm going to right click. I'm going to create a group out of them, and then I'm going to name the group spinner group. Very good. So we've got that there. Now, you notice I have the group selected. And I'm going to go over here to this drop down. I'm going to scroll all the way down. I'm going to find visible, and I'm going to reference a global variable here. I'm going to say GBL show spinner. Okay. So we've got that. Now, I've got some errors here because the application is like, what's that variable, right? So I'm going to add a button here that's going to initialize it. In fact, we might actually want to go over here to app on start. Okay. Here at the very top, you should probably set this global show spinner to true. Okay. So if we have any database operations here in the app on start, we got the spinner going on. And at the very bottom, when everything's done, we're going to set that to false. So that's what you will do. So if you use forms and you're adding a record, editing a record, before you use that function submit form, you say this line of code here, set the spinner to true. Then you use the submit form. Submit form. And then once that's done, below that, you're going to have the one that we have here below, which is set the spinner to false. Okay. Because we changed the app on start, we need to click on these three dots and run it again. So we've got all of our values for the menu and everything. Okay. So we have a monstrosity of a application here, 100 screen application. And So we've got the spinner inside of our component. And so that's already set up. So what I could do, what's sort of useful here for this button is we could, for this on select, sort of test out our spinner, is we could do the, what do I have on my clipboard? Yeah, that's what I want to do. But instead of true, what I want to do is I want to reverse what I have in there. Okay, so I'm going to run this. Look at that. Isn't that cool? Sort of seems slow, doesn't it? Maybe I shouldn't have slowed it down. Maybe I should have kept it at 1. But you could always make those changes. So, for example, when we're messing with this, if we set this back to 1, it sort of seemed maybe speed up a little bit. Yeah. So just to let you know, if you want that to be faster, you can change that within that loading.io website. Okay. Very good. So I'm going to click on that button to make the spinner go away. So what I'm thinking is we do have this data source that's going to keep track of all of our screens. And you'll see the purpose of this SharePoint list that I've envisioned here momentarily as we sort of set things up. The first thing that I want to do is I want to take what we have for the menu, that big table of 100 different items. I want to throw that into SharePoint right away. Okay, so I'm going to rename this. I'm going to say test spinner. Okay, there we go. And I'm going to leave that as is. Just put it over there. I'm going to add a button. And this is where it's going to get fun. Got a button here on select. And what we're going to do is we are going to, all right, I do see a new comment here from Martin. Please, when you can do something on barcode generation and printing. Excellent idea. Thank you for the idea. I probably won't cover that today. However, because I want to probably research the best way of doing it. So I just don't want to give you guys some type of half-baked idea of what I know about it. I sort of want to research, make sure I'm doing it the best way. So I'm not teaching something that's a bad practice. But what that could be, Martin, is it could be one of these screens. The whole purpose of this monstrosity of an application is each screen could be a different lesson where we go into a topic. I upload this application for you guys as I add to it, and you guys can get all the lessons in this one app in just one download. Okay, so as an application developer, that's what you sort of if you're a beginner. If you're not a beginner, you've been around for a while and been doing software development for a while. You know that the central theme of your job is to automate things, save time with things that are tedious or are being repeated a lot in the business world. So this was an idea that I had to sort of knock out, something that normally would probably have to be repeated a lot. So let's get back to, so what we're going to do is we're going to take all the items that we generated in the app on start, and we're going to insert them all to that SharePoint list. So we are going to do a patch. Okay, so patch. All right, so we'll just say TBL. We'll get all of our SharePoint tables that we've named with TBL in there. So screens, very good. And I'm going to copy the name of that because I'm going to use it. Defaults. Okay, so I pasted the name of that data source. So there's two different ways of using a patch. One is for inserts, new rows or records within a data source. And the other way is doing edits. Instead of using defaults, defaults just goes to the data source like, hey, what are the default values for this data type? And it gives you that. Otherwise, the traditional way of doing this is to do a lookup to go find the record that you're going to edit. So essentially what it's looking for that second parameter for patch is the record that you want to patch or update. Okay. And then we're going to add in our items here. Okay. So what we need to do, I'm going to click on format text. So we know we don't have any errors and it formatted our text here. What I think we should do, we should use a for all, which is sort of a nice way of doing a for each loop within a collection or table of values. So for all, okay. So we'll use that function there. And what we'll do here is we will reference, what do we call that? We called it global menu items. I will have to admit to you guys, I probably should have called that collection because we're sort of creating a collection here. So in that case, the recommended practice for Microsoft is actually to call that COL. So it's sort of like a collection. So I just wanted to mention that to you, but we're just going to roll with it for now. We could always refactor or improve the code later. Okay. So we have got a for all. So we should be in the button here. Okay. So in the button, we're doing a for all. And the one that we're going to traverse through, we're going to go through each item is that global menu items. Okay. And I always like to use, I don't like to use the this record down below. I always like to use a little moniker, a little name here called my, use a comma. For each item in that collection, we'll do a patch. And then we need an ending parenthesis for the for all. Okay. And do this patch. I always like to put a semicolon at the end of my line of code there. We can put another semicolon here. Okay. So now what we're going to do, if I could go find my SharePoint list, okay, here, I'm going to move this over to another screen here in a moment, but I want to show you, I'm going to be dumping over. We definitely need something in title. That's a required field. And I don't like to rename title at all either, because it has a weird effect with SharePoint, because it always remembers it as title. So I usually don't mess with title too much. So we have menu text, screen heading text, screen use. Okay. Okay. So we're actually going to put the real screen name, like screen one, screen two, into title. That's what I was thinking. The ID is going to be automatic. Okay. So let's put in here title, and we'll say my, which goes back to this global menu items here at the top. My dot screen reference dot name. Okay, that's going to be a string. So we'll put that in there. All right, very good. And so we'll also, let's initialize these other values. Okay, so we've got menu text and screen heading text. Let's default these to the same value, but later on each of the screens, we could actually go in and rename these things. Okay. All right, so let's do that. So we'll say menu text I dot. Actually, we're going to use exactly the same thing. So very good. Menu text, screen heading text, do the same thing. And that screen use is multiple lines of text. We'll actually type in a description for the screen. I don't think I'm really going to mess with that right now, but that's what we'll do. All right, I think I'll leave it as that. Now we've got 100 rows to update. So let's call this insert new items. So we'll call it, and we'll make this something like 250. Okay, but before we do, and this is a perfect example, by the way, of what we should be doing. When we have something we know is going to take a few minutes for a button like this, we need to make sure we're using our spinner. So we'll set that to true. At the end here, we'll set this to false. Okay. Now I'm going to be honest with you guys. This is probably, hopefully we're not going to have any errors. So sometimes you'll click on this and you think this is going to be a while. Before I click on it, I want to just make sure our spinner's on the top of everything, and it is. Okay. I'm just going to click on it and see what happens. There we go. Now that didn't take very long. That makes me feel like there's an error in here, which is not good. No, it actually worked. I expected it to like run for a good minute or two. Oh, what is going on here? Look at this, guys. One screen. Well, we're screen one. It has an ID of 13. That is not acceptable. Oh my goodness. Okay. You know what we should have done is we should have sorted that or something because look, one ID of one, screen one. Um, that is really strange. I find that really strange. So that makes me feel like we need to have our own IDs. Yeah. So what I'm going to do, guys, in order to fix this, I want to be completely independent of this. What's important, to be honest, is that this is the same all the way through. Screen 25, screen 25, screen 25. As long as those are the same, I'm fine with that. And I'm sort of going to decouple from this ID. So what I'll do is I'll add in over here a number, and I'll call this screen ID. I typically rely on SharePoint IDs, but for this case, I'm going to create a screen ID separate from it. Create it as a number. Okay, very good. So that's going to be there. Now I don't see, there it is. Okay, I'm going to move this over here. Very good. So it doesn't have anything there now. So you know what? This is a great exercise. So you'll see how I work if you guys aren't familiar with dealing with this data, like just mass importing a bunch of stuff. So we're going to go back through. I'm going to copy and paste this little menu item. Okay. And guys, by the way, we're at about an hour, 37 minutes. I was looking to end about 2 hours. If you have any questions, anything to throw in the chat, just throw them in the chat. Because when we get done, after I sort of finish up this portion, if there's anything you guys want to chat about here on the live stream, let me know. We'll just continue to chat, talk about Power Apps. Have any Q&A tips and tricks, any types of things, just throw it in the chat, and we'll discuss it here together. Okay. But I think my live stream is probably a good 10 or 20 seconds behind, but I'll continue to monitor the chat. Okay. All right. So we've got to copy this button. So I'm going to leave this here. Okay. So insert menu items. Right down here, we're going to say update menu items. Okay. So it's actually a great thing that it sort of messed things up and had the IDs all messed up, because what I want to do is I want to go back through these menu items. Okay. And what I'm going to do, I don't need to specify all this. I do need to do a lookup though. Um, there might be like a shortcut where I could say my, or even this item. I don't think. See, that's the thing is, I don't think you can patch a row from up here. Nah, never mind. So this is what I'll do. I think I'm getting my ideas mixed up here. So I'll do a lookup, and the table screens, and we'll do a lookup there, and we need to pull back a single item. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say where title equals my dot. Let's do screen reference dot name. Okay, so that is going to give us our reference. And you see these little double underscores. That's not a problem. That is I mean, we could get around that by referencing the screen name. Screen name is exactly the same. But we're not working with anything over 100 records at this point anyway, so it really doesn't matter. But all right, so we're gonna pull up the record by using this where clause, this criteria. Okay, and that's going to be unique value. That's fine. Just going to pull up the record, and really what we need to update is the screen ID. And what we'll do is we'll reference the my.id. The my.id will have the true ID that we need to put in there. And for some reason I have a T in there, so let's take that out. All right, so my ID, and we also don't want an equal sign. We want a colon. Okay, while we're dealing with all kinds of errors here. So let's hover over the red squigglies. Screen ID does not exist. Okay. What happened was we updated our SharePoint list, but we didn't go over here to Power Apps and let it know that there was a change. So what we do is we go over here and click on refresh. And then at that point, it should be aware of it. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to run through all those screen items that we set up over here and app on start, each one. Okay. We're going to match up the screen name or the screen reference dot name, which should be the same thing, with the titles we have here. And once we find each one of these one at a time, we're going to go in and drop in the little ID value there. Okay. So let's do that. I'm going to hit run and I'm going to click update. I would imagine this would take a while. And it really didn't. It really didn't take that much time at all. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring down that SharePoint lists. Look at that. It did it. So what's most important is, see, we have a 12 here. Okay. We have a 12, 12, 12. As long as all those things line up, we're good. It really doesn't matter what we have in the ID since we've added that extra column there. All right. So why, you guys might be wondering, why did I go through all the trouble of creating the SharePoint list and create all those values in there? It's great. It's absolutely great because check this out. We could go over to the component, and what we could do here is let's just add a little spot on the screen that we will work with here. And let's give it a background of let's say a light gray here, maybe even lighter. So maybe F5, 5F5. That should be a really light gray. All right. So what I'll do on this little thing here is I'll set this up to have a border of 2, and I'll make it dashed. Okay. So just notice a little area down here, and I might want to make that darker gray for the border so it doesn't look too weird. All right. So what we'll do is we'll be able to update all these little bits of information. Okay. So let's add a text input here. And I don't ever want to update the title. Um, but we might want to change. Let's take out that text input there. And let's put in here hint text. And what we will say is this will be menu text. Okay, let's put in a little label here. And I don't like my labels to be all that tall. Maybe 25 pixels, and we'll make the font maybe be 11. Okay. And I typically like my labels to be just as long as the text field there. And we'll say menu text. Okay. Okay. So we have menu text and we have heading text. So let's move these around a little bit. Screen heading text. By any chance, if by any chance there's no text in the text box, I sort of want the same thing to be there, okay? So they can see what they should be typing in. And so we have that, and also screen use. So what I might do to try to save on vertical space here is I might want to put this down here. I'll make this aligned right. So I might really mess with what I was doing here. Okay. Okay. So with the idea where I'm going with all this, guys, is that within these screens, you can go in and start modifying it. It will update the SharePoint list. And then also when this application starts up, it's going to read from that list. So we can sort of dynamically change essentially the names of the screens dynamically. All right. So we don't have to go into Power Apps and change them there. It's going to know about them and update them dynamically, which I think is really cool. All right. So I'm going to put a Heading a 10 there. All right, very good. And then also what I'll do is I will copy and paste this. So we just have one more field to add. We could add some more cooler stuff later on, but for now, very good. There we go. And this is going to be called use. Actually, I don't think we'll columns there. All right, so here we go, and we can move these things around to save the absolute most amount of space that we can, because we've got things to do in this app, and we don't want this little stuff here at the bottom. And what we could do is add a little icon here at the bottom that will open, expand, and then collapse this. A lot of times, how menu hamburger icons are used, so it's not always showing. But for now, let's just leave it as is. And perhaps also what we should do, we should probably add in a little save button. Let's add that. And this is how I add buttons. This is a little bit of a tip and trick. So I know I want a save button. When I want to add an icon, when I say button, for this context, I mean icon. So I just click on add. Okay, even though what I really want is not an ad. Then I'll go over here and use this search and say save. There we go. That's what I was looking for. Okay. So I'll put this little save button over here. And I always find that spacing and alignment is really important in applications. So a lot of times if I build out an application with you guys here, I spend a lot of time sort of making things spaced out and aligned a certain way. I spend a lot of time with that. Um, so let's make sure that these text boxes are pulling in the current values that are in SharePoint. Okay. So for this text box, what we will do, so the name of this gallery over here, let's actually name this gallery. Instead of gallery, we'll say GAL menu. I might say component comp menu because it's actually a menu within the component. Okay. All right, very good. So I'm going to click on the name that I just renamed it. I'm going to hit Control C. Now for this text box, for the default, what I'm going to say is that gallery.selected. I'm going to be looking at ID. I think I'll do that. And then what I'll do is I'll do a lookup. Lookup. We're going to do a lookup inside the table screens. And we're going to look for screen ID. And then we're going to say equals this. Menu text. And look at that. It says screen one. This is the item, and there it is. All right. So I'm going to copy that. I'm going to go over here to this text box. I want to paste this. And instead of menu text, this is going to be called screen heading text. All right. And then down here for screen use, I'm going to click on default and go here and say screen use. All right. All right. Then, well, first of all, let's go back over to screens. Let's run it and let's make sure this is actually working as we would like it to. So I'm going to click on screen 2. Perhaps the lookup is causing a little bit. You know what we could do that would be much more efficient is we could do a throw all the records within SharePoint, which should just be 100 at this point. I mean, if we get crazy and make this application be a 200 screen application, we're still only dealing with 200. We're not dealing with the upper limits of 2,000 record limit within PowerApps. So that is how you can really speed things up if you're working with a big data source or working with a data source and you don't want to have to go back to the data source and do lookups. Uh, what you should do is go in here and here, and we will say clear collect, and we'll name our collection with a COL, and we'll call this screens. I might be tempted to call this SP for short for SharePoint screens, not to be confused with this collection down here below. And I'll just go get it TBL screens. And I'd probably always want it to be sorted a certain way. So let's sort this based on the screen ID. Okay. And it's not required that the default is ascending. So I'll just go ahead and type in ascending there, just to give completeness. Now, what I'll also do is click on format text. So I know I have no errors. Very good. And what I'll do is I hit Control S, as we should be doing often. All right, so I'm going to click on the three dots. I'm going to hit Run on Screen. All right, there's screen one. There we go. All right, so now that we have that collection over here in the component, instead of doing a lookup 3 times for this guy here, we could go look inside COL SP COL SP screens. Okay, there we go. And everything else should be the exact same. All right. So a double click on that word of the collection. Go here, paste there, paste there. Okay. Now I want to make sure it's still making sure that it's going to be running quickly. So you see how fast this runs? It's much more faster now. So right now I'm on screen 4 and it has screen 4 at the bottom. If I click on screen 10, boom, screen 10 at the bottom. So it's not too bad. I think perhaps, if anything, it's the transition between the screens that's taking a while. If I click on 15, it does that fade. That fade probably takes a moment to actually show that visually. And something that we could do maybe to cut down on that is go back over to components on the click event for this thing. Instead of on the on select, instead of doing fade, let's just say none. Yeah, maybe that would speed it up. Okay, let's run this. 16. Okay, 20. Okay, there's a little bit of a delay, but that's not bad. I mean, it's getting better. Okay, and guys, this is a 100 screen application. This is pretty nice. Okay. All right. What else are we going to do? Well, if we ever update this, we actually want it to update the SharePoint list. Okay. And also, we'll want to repopulate this collection as well. So I'm going to copy that. Okay. I want to go back over to the component. Okay. For the on select. And what should we do here? We should do a set on our spinner. So GBL show spinner, we're going to set that to true. And I'm going to use this clear collect at the end. Okay, after we do our patch that we're about to do. And then at the very end, we need to set this to false. And I don't want to forget about it. Otherwise, the spinner will just sit there and animate. All right, so let's do a patch on TBL screens. All right, so we do need to do a lookup. TBL screens. So we need to make sure the screen ID is the same as gal comp menu dot selected dot screen ID. Just regular ID. We'll do a lookup there, and then what we will do a comma, and we will update these possibly 3 different fields here. Okay, so we've got menu text. Okay, and well, let's name these little text boxes here. TXT menu text. TXT screen heading text. I hit a Control S just to do a little restore point there. Yeah, whenever I see PowerApps start to lag or something, I'm like, ooh, I better get a restore point in there before it like really sort of poops out on me. So we'll say txt screen use. Okay. Go back into our little save icon button here. Okay, menu text will be txt menu text, comma. Then we'll say screen heading text. Txt text. And then the third one, screen use. Text. Very good. So it will do the update. It will update the database. Then it will do the clear collect again and sort of refresh the collection. And that should all be good there. All right. So, and also your spinner. If you have a spinner in your application on any screen, if you add anything, obviously we added a bunch of stuff here. So we've got this icon. Let's rename that icon to ICO save. Okay. So we've got that. We have this label here. If I don't refer to a control and code, typically I won't even mess with trying to label it, giving it a meaningful name. Okay, so we've got all these things, including that. Let's create a group out of that. Sort of keeps things organized, and we'll call this update screen group. Okay, but then we want to make sure that spinner is on top. Okay, so I'm going to click on those 3 dots. I'm going to say reorder, bring to front. So when you hit that save button, that spinner is going to be on top of everything. Okay. All right. So I'm going to go back over to the screen here. Okay. So we have screen 1, the menu text, whatever we want to name it here, we can just change it. What would we want this to be? Let's say over here in the screen use, we used, or say this screen was used to spell that right? Initialize menu system. Examples of hatch and collections are in this screen. Look, it actually fit all within that. Okay, the menu text. Let's call this init menu. Okay, then over here for this screen heading tool, like screen, we'll have screen at the end with a space. So say initialization menu initialization screen. I like that. All right, so we're gonna hit save. Cross your fingers. Hopefully it all works. Okay. Now it still says screen 1 in those 2 locations. Okay. Now both of those locations are in the component. So let's get out of that. We'll go into the components here and let's update this. All right. So what we will do is, you know what? I'm just going to comment this out. I sort of want to rip the whole thing out, but rarely will I just completely delete code. I'll just comment it out first. And then the second time I come across, like, why did I comment that out? And if there's no reason for it to be commented, I'll just rip it out at that point. But so here I will do a lookup. Actually, down here, this is the exact code. If you click on this little text box here for the default, this is the exact text I'm looking for. Okay. So instead of going through all that, there it is. Cool. All right. So this little init menu here that I use for the default, let's do that. Over here for this label, instead of this item dot screen name, okay, we're going to look up here. And what we'll do instead of this gallery dot selected, we'll say this item dot ID. Look at that. I don't know if you guys find this as cool as I have found it, but I think this is incredibly cool. Look at this. So I could leave the screen just as is, and I could add all kinds of sort orders and stuff. So as we create new lessons, this little item will be at the very bottom, you know? So screen 2, all right? So next week or tomorrow, like I want to teach you guys about the absolute function within PowerApps. Well, this whole screen will be about absolute functions. And I could go in here and let's say absolute function. Okay, screen heading text. Well, I definitely want the word screen in there, right? To try to use the recommended best practice for naming screens. Okay, and what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say how to use absolute function. And by the way, guys, I think that the absolute function is not called the absolute. I think it's called ABS, if I'm not mistaken. But this is just a simple example here. I'm going to hit. This is where we learn about the absolute function ABS. Okay. And I'd hate to make a mistake. I really don't use it that often. But let's do a little search called PowerApps functions ABS. So just to show you what I've found here. Yeah, ABS. ABS function returns a non-negative value of its argument. If a number is negative, there you go, it returns a positive. Okay. So what I could do is I could add another field where I've got more of a description, but I could add that to it. I'm gonna hit save. Now, something that we're not doing here is we've got it listed down here, but it's not really being displayed anywhere else. You know what I mean? So for example, let's go up here and we could actually add in a little label. I don't want it inside of the gallery. So I'm going to click out of the gallery, add the label, and actually put it up here. Instead of the screen heading text, we're going to say screen use. Very good. Now we want to give it more of a left padding there. But there's a lot of information. Very good. So this has got like a nice light blue color. What I might do for this blue color is sort of copy it, that hex color, and then down here for the fill for this label, I could go and use the same hex color, but then give it an alpha value of maybe 50%. So it sort of looks like it belongs here a little bit. So it looks a little nice, I guess. Okay, I'm going to go back over to the screen here. Okay, hit run. And for all these others that haven't been initialized, there is no text for that. But now look at this. I mean, sort of shows you like you might want to move things around a little bit. So that's this was the main gist of this screen, was to use these different things, right? So I think we're near the end, guys. We have a 100 screen monster application where all the screens, the menu is based on those 100 screens, and we can utilize SharePoint as a data source to dynamically change the menu item, the screen names at the top, and the menu items, and sort of dynamically build this application like that. And I think one of the reasons I think this application is so cool, there are some applications that I build. If you just look at the little garage application I've been building with you guys, if you go to the playlist on the channel, there's this little work order system I've been building with you guys. I think I've got 11 videos up there now, each of them about an hour, hour and a half long on average, and sort of building it screen by screen. There's quite a few screens in that application. And I actually met with the client a few minutes before this live screencast, and instead of looking at all these screens on the side, typically I order them in a certain way. I've got most users, the screens that most users access near the top, and then stuff that the app admins are near the bottom. And I just sort of had this desire to sort of decouple all the if you have an application that's got tons of screens, sort of decouple sort of navigating around when you're in the design mode. Like if you had this screen here and I want to get to the 100 with, so instead of looking through, let's say these weren't listed all nice in this ordinal number here, screen 69, 70, 71. Instead of doing that, said these actually, these actually had names like add, edit, customer, that type of thing. If you're looking for something specific, you could sort around and find the exact screen, which was maybe 74. And we actually had like a little search function, and actually, click on it, boom, go to 74. Look, I get out, and it's selected down here. That's sort of cool. So a lot of reasons why I think this application is sort of cool in its own way and going to be really useful for us.